Hey everyone, thanks for tuning in. If you're new here, consider subscribing. It really helps keep these stories coming. And while you're here, let me know in the comments where you're listening from. Now, sit back, relax, and let's get into the story. I've worked the overnight shift at KPRS Channel 7 News for the last 6 years. It's one of those tiny affiliate stations most people scroll past without thinking twice. Your trusted local source for weather, traffic, and wildlife sightings no one cares about until a bear wanders into someone's backyard. The station sits off Route 219, just south of Bradford, Pennsylvania, on a hilltop meant to give the antenna enough reach over the surrounding forest. We're so far out. Sometimes, even the deer hesitate to come this way. My name's Kepler. I'm a broadcast technician, part engineer, part babysitter. I monitor feeds, maintain equipment, switch between overnight segments, and keep the station running when the real anchors are home in bed. On nights like tonight, that mostly means looping pre-recorded weather reports, checking radar updates, and running the National Weather Service emergency tone tests once an hour. The studio is glass-walled, modern, but surrounded on 3 sides by thick pine forest, peaceful, isolated. It was just after midnight when the first strange blip hit the emergency feed. I was in the control room, eating leftover Chinese out of a foam container, watching radar models swirl lazily over western Pennsylvania. The midnight update had just rolled. Light fog rolling in from the Alleghenies, no real storms in sight. I'd queued up the next loop, dimmed the studio lights, and settled in for what I thought would be another quiet graveyard shift. Then the emergency broadcast monitor chirped, once, sharp, and cut to black. Not entirely unusual. Sometimes we get test feeds from the National Emergency Alert System. Usually grainy video clips with federal seals and timestamp overlays, just routine things. But this wasn't routine. The screen blinked once, twice, then snapped to a shaky live image. An empty press room, darkened except for a spotlight illuminating a podium. The U.S. Department of Homeland Security seal glowed faintly behind it. No audio, no context. I sat up, brushing chow mein off my lap. I checked the source tag. It was a DHS uplink through EAS Channel 3. That's not normal. That line's reserved for Category 1 emergencies, large-scale evacuations, biological threats, foreign attacks. I checked the local feeds. No weather alerts, no Amber alerts, no regional bulletins. Still quiet. Then the phone rang. Landline only. We keep it hardwired in case the internet or cell lines go down. I picked up, expecting a network supervisor or maybe someone from Harrisburg checking in on the relay. Nothing, just dead air. Channel 7 News overnight desk, I said again. This is Aaron. Do you read? Static. I hung up, checked the lines. They were lit, 2 other calls on hold. I switched to line 2. Still silence. On line 3, I heard breathing. Hello, I said again. KPRS, you're on a monitored line. Still nothing, just heavy, slow breathing. Then something I still can't quite explain. There was a wet sound, like someone chewing near the mic. Then the call cut. I sat there for a second, trying to keep rational. Could have been a prank. Could have been a crossed signal. We'd had a squirrel chew through a ground wire once, knocked out a whole night's worth of programming. But then the emergency monitor flickered again. This time, the press room wasn't empty. A man stepped into the light. He was wearing a CDC jacket over what looked like a Kevlar vest. He looked tired, sweat glistening on his forehead, his eyes bloodshot. He stepped to the podium, adjusted the mic, and looked directly into the camera. His voice, when it came, was flat, mechanical, like he'd rehearsed it and couldn't bear to say it again. All residents are advised to remain indoors. Do not approach infected individuals. If you have symptoms, fever, aggression, skin discoloration, quarantine immediately. Repeat, shelter in place, avoid contact, stay hidden. This is not a drill. I fumbled for the record button, then snapped a screen capture. The image glitched, then the feed cut to static. My heart pounded. That wasn't pre-recorded, that was live. But nothing official had come through our regional alert network. Nothing from the state police. No updates from Harrisburg. I checked social media, Twitter, Reddit, even old Facebook groups tied to local emergency preparedness. Dead quiet. Then, I heard the motion sensor beep from the lobby. We're supposed to be locked up at night. After the 2022 break-in by that drunk hunter looking for his dog, corporate had the security doors reinforced. Only 2 people had overnight clearance, me and the janitor, Walt. But Walt had the week off. His wife was having surgery in Pittsburgh. So, when I heard the motion sensor chime from the front lobby and saw figures moving behind the glass, I knew something wasn't right. The system logs badge swipes and no one had used one. There wasn't supposed to be anyone else here, certainly not a small crowd of slow, hunched silhouettes pressing themselves against the reinforced doors like they'd never seen glass before. I watched on the security monitor as they twitched and shifted with unnatural rhythm, not knocking or yelling, just pressing in. One of them started dragging its face across the surface, leaving a dark, smeared trail behind. Blood, or something worse. I reached under the console for the lock override and double-checked every entry point. The front and back doors were magnetically sealed and reinforced with steel rods, a feature added after a spat of rural burglaries a few years ago. The loading bay in the back was chained shut from the inside. The old emergency exit near the server room had been welded permanently after a coyote wandered in one winter. I was sealed in, for better or worse. That's when I realized I was still broadcasting. I'd patched the emergency mic directly into the uplink during the glitch and hadn't toggled it off. My last warning, the one I'd spoken while watching them gather outside, had gone out live. I imagined it spilling out across our overnight coverage range, the feed repeating every 10 minutes across old TVs and gas stations and motel lobbies, flickering in truck stops and dim living rooms across northwestern Pennsylvania and western New York. Maybe someone had heard it. Maybe it was just feeding empty signal to towers with no one left to listen. I toggled the mic off and cut the transmitter into standby. I didn't want to attract more attention. There was a low hum in the air now, not from the equipment but from outside. I stepped away from the console and crept toward the back of the studio, trying to keep low and out of the sight lines of the lobby. The hallway was long, dimly lit, with posterboard promotions of long-canceled local shows lining the walls. Weekend gardening with Milt, local spotlight with Hannah Beal, Friday night forecast. All dead-eyed smiles and out-of-date logos. I passed the tiny kitchen, the old conference room we hadn't used since before COVID, and the dusty, unused green room that still had unopened water bottles from last year's fundraiser telethon. I was heading for the rack room, where the servers were housed. That room had no windows, a steel core, and a satellite relay backup with direct uplink access. If something happened to the main feed, I could still push a signal out from there. But before I reached the door, my phone buzzed. It startled me more than it should have. Cell signal out here is usually awful, and I hadn't expected anything to come through. I pulled it from my pocket, the screen dim in the hallway light. 1 bar, no data, but a text had gotten through. From unknown. If you're live, keep broadcasting. Repeat everything you see. They're watching satellite pickups. Stay hidden. No number, no signature, just the words. I stared at the message for a moment, then checked for any others. Nothing. I tried replying, but the message failed to send. I kept walking, heart in my throat. I didn't know who had sent it, maybe DHS, maybe some anonymous insider, maybe someone trying to mess with me. But it was the first contact I'd had in over half an hour, and that counted for something. I opened the door to the rack room, stepped inside, and locked it behind me. The room smelled of ozone and plastic. Server towers hummed quietly in the center racks, cables snaking across the walls in tight, clean bundles. I flicked on the auxiliary power and fired up the emergency broadcast terminal. It took nearly 2 minutes to initialize. The old system always lagged during a cold boot. But when the interface came up, I saw something that made my blood run colder. Dozens of local affiliates, some from our region, others from as far out as Illinois, Ohio, West Virginia, had dropped signal within the last 60 minutes. I pulled the downed stations list. Most had gone dark without explanation. A few showed partial feeds, frozen frames of abandoned newsrooms, test patterns, or black screens with the word "Standby" in white block letters. I pinged our own feed, still live, still up. Our satellite relay was working. We were, as far as I could tell, one of the only rural affiliates still transmitting unbroken. I toggled the uplink, then pulled the mic close. If anyone was out there, anyone, I needed to get the truth out. This is Aaron Kepler, Channel 7 news technician. It's currently 12:41 a.m. Eastern. I'm broadcasting from the KPRS satellite relay in McKean County. If you're hearing this, stay inside. Do not go near infected individuals. I don't know what's happening. Official channels are down. Regional stations have dropped off the map. My own station is surrounded by what appear to be infected persons, walking, moving strangely, unresponsive to voice commands. They appear injured or altered. I don't know if this is viral, parasitic, or something worse. But I'm safe for now. Repeat, I am safe for now. Please shelter in place. If you can hear me, you're not alone. I let the loop run, reprogrammed the feed to rebroadcast every 20 minutes, and locked down the system with a hardline override. No remote interruption. No automatic schedules. Just me and the open signal. Outside the server room, I heard the hallway floor creak. I froze. The lights in this room don't reach the hallway. There was no wind, no movement in the building other than mine. Another step. Slow, measured. Then a faint dragging. I turned off the mic and killed the lights in the rack room. There was no window, but I knew the layout well enough to move in the dark. I grabbed the old broadcast wrench we used to reseat coaxial ports on the roof tower. Heavy, steel, roughly 2 feet long, and slid silently behind the equipment rack closest to the door. Something brushed the outside handle. The building's security doors were reinforced, yes, but the interior ones? Just standard wood core office doors with metal frames. The knob turned, locked. Something pushed, then again, harder this time. I held my breath. Then silence. I waited in the dark, muscles cramped, heart pounding so loud I was afraid it might give me away. Minutes passed. I couldn't be sure if it had left or was just waiting on the other side. I checked my phone again. Still no signal. But another message had appeared. Same format. No number. You are being watched. Satellite audio confirmed. Do not engage. Maintain broadcast. Visuals coming. I didn't know what it meant, visuals coming. But I had the sense that someone, somewhere, was still monitoring what was happening. Maybe NORAD. Maybe an internal DHS cell. Maybe a rogue engineer in some control room like mine, doing the same thing I was. But something didn't sit right. I turned the terminal monitor back on and checked the audio channel logs. Something odd caught my eye. A parallel feed, channel B19, had gone active without my input. It was pulling footage not from my local servers, but from an exterior camera I hadn't routed manually. one of the pole cams out by the northern tree line. Motion activated, infrared capable. Installed during our 2021 budget expansion to track wildlife activity near the transmitter tower. The feed came through in grainy black and white. It showed the forest just beyond our station. Windless, still. Then motion. Figures. Dozens of them. Moving slowly, steadily, in a loose formation between the trees. Not shambling, not stumbling, marching. Some were naked, others in torn hospital gowns, still others in what looked like work uniforms. But all of them shared the same posture. Heads tilted, arms slack, bodies twitching with small spasms as they moved. Some dragged objects, metal, wood, something clanking softly. One was missing both legs, but still pulled itself forward using its arms. I stared at the last frozen frame from the infrared camera before the screen flickered into static, the system reporting a hard connection loss. Power to that external unit was buried in conduit underground. It shouldn't have failed unless someone physically severed the line. That realization made my mouth go dry. Whatever those things were, they were more aware than I'd assumed. They weren't just wandering. They were eliminating visibility, and that required intelligence, maybe not in the individual creatures but in the behavior of the swarm. Collective awareness. Tactical movement. Someone, or something, was driving them. I stayed in the server room for several more minutes, listening for sounds in the hallway, but there was only silence. Eventually, the need to act pushed me out. I moved quietly, inching the door open and listening with my breath held. Nothing. No footsteps, no dragging, just the quiet hum of powered systems and the faint ticking of the clock above Studio B. I made my way back to the main control room, hunched low beneath the window line, then slowly stood behind the production board. Outside, the glass walls of the studio showed only trees, black silhouettes against the faintest glow of starlight. No floodlights, no porch lamps. Power to the exterior systems was gone. I hadn't turned them off. I brought up the building's internal management interface and confirmed it. The exterior breaker had been manually tripped. Someone, or something, had accessed the sub-panel behind the transmitter shack. I wasn't alone anymore. Not just outside, maybe not even inside. I set up a diagnostic on the emergency override loop and pulled up the off-site broadcast mirror. The signal was still being received, at least by a few key relays. A handful of the rural station towers hadn't gone offline yet, and that meant my voice was still going out. I tapped in a manual message overlay and began crafting a detailed warning. Stay inside. All symptoms match a fast-moving pathogen, possibly bloodborne. Infected individuals exhibit coordinated group behavior and rapid onset of aggression. Avoid major roads. Do not respond to human-like voices outdoors. Secure food, water, and light sources. Use battery-powered radios. If you are armed, do not aim for the chest. Center mass ineffective. Stay silent. Stay hidden. I pushed it out as a text crawl beneath the repeating loop of my earlier broadcast, then looped in a satellite radar feed for good measure. Something real to anchor it, to make the whole thing look like a genuine emergency protocol instead of some lone guy flipping out in a bunker. It was as close to professional as I could make it under the circumstances. Then I opened the audio channel and began speaking again, voice as steady as I could manage. This is Aaron Kepler, KPRS Channel 7. Time is 1:04 a.m. Eastern. If you are receiving this signal, you are not alone. I am broadcasting from the emergency relay facility outside Bradford, Pennsylvania. My station is currently encircled by infected individuals. They move in coordinated patterns. They are not human anymore. If you see one, do not engage. Do not open your doors. I have lost visual contact with the perimeter and external security systems have been compromised. I do not know how far this has spread. Maintain radio silence, wait for daylight. Trust no one without visual confirmation. I let the signal roll and leaned back, breathing hard. I felt dizzy. My head ached. The fluorescent lights above me buzzed faintly, and the stale air of the control room was starting to feel thin. I forced myself to sip from a warm bottle of Gatorade I'd stashed in the fridge hours ago. I couldn't afford to collapse from exhaustion or dehydration, not now. Then the backup radio chirped. The ham unit mounted beneath the console was only supposed to be used in coordination with volunteer spotters during tornado season, but we kept it tuned to the regional disaster response frequency, 146.520 MHz, open simplex. I hadn't heard a blip all night, but now it came alive with a burst of static followed by a faint, scratchy voice. East Station, repeating, "This is Stafford Relay 2. Eastern Command has fallen. Repeat, Eastern Command is offline. Units are advised to self-isolate. No evac orders. Shelter in place. Do not trust federal markings. Civilian infection confirmed in uniformed personnel." I turned up the gain and scanned frequencies, chasing the voice. It bounced, faint and fading, like it was being relayed through multiple towers or degraded by distance. But it was real. Someone was still transmitting. I caught only fragments. Knee, Pennsylvania, now red zone. Buffalo region compromised. Do not engage mobile units if directionless. Some mimicking speech patterns. That last part chilled me. Mimicking speech patterns. I pulled up the internal archive and started reviewing my own outgoing broadcast logs. The mic had recorded everything, every loop, every word, but the audio analysis program flagged something unexpected during the last loop. Background noise, low and far from the mic. I isolated it, ran it through a spectral scrubber, and boosted the volume. It was a voice, almost mine, trying to be mine. Words not quite right. A slurred echo from the studio glass outside. "Don't look out, doors. Aaron, it's warm in here." I froze. That hadn't come from inside. The security feed confirmed it. A figure had stood outside the glass wall of the studio just before the looped warning. It was still, watching, posture slack. But when I matched the timestamp to the distorted audio, it moved its mouth. It had mimicked my words before they played, which meant it had heard them during the last loop and repeated them back as bait. I staggered back from the console. These things weren't just reactive, they were listening, learning. The phone buzzed again. Landline, flashing red. I hesitated, then picked it up. A woman's voice crackled through. "This is Nancy Cho, WBTB Channel 14 out of Newfield. If you're live, we need confirmation. Are you transmitting from McKean County?" I blinked, my throat tightened. A human voice. Clear. Controlled. "Yes," I said. "I'm Kepler. KPRS Channel 7, I'm still up. Are you secure?" "Affirmative," she said, voice clipped and urgent. "Transmitting from a backup truck near Route 417. Mobile unit. We've got about 2 hours of battery, then silence. We're parked behind an old forestry station. There are 2 of us. We saw your feed come in on the affiliate repeater. You're the only rural studio still on the grid." "Have you seen them?" I asked. "The infected, are they coordinated?" "Too coordinated," she replied. "We saw them tear through a fire station 20 minutes ago. One used a crowbar to pry open the emergency lockers. Another grabbed an axe. They didn't speak, not exactly, but they echo sounds. Repeated our engine noise like coyotes. It's not random. Any idea what this is?" "Closest match we've seen is a neuroparasitic agent. Fast onset, possibly aerosolized, but they're hiding that. DHS won't respond. My co-anchor's dead. Killed by something that looked like a medic. We're not calling it human anymore." We shared coordinates, and she warned me of road closures and reports of infected moving along State Route 59, sweeping west. The forests were no longer safe. The cities had gone dark too fast. I relayed everything I knew, everything I'd recorded, and promised to stay on the air as long as I could. Then her signal began to cut. "I think they're close," she said. "If we lose uplink, keep broadcasting. Someone's got to—" And then silence. Just like that, the only voice I'd heard all night was gone. I sat in the chair, eyes glued to the glass walls, staring into the dark beyond the pines. There was no movement now, just the suffocating stillness of the forest at night. But I knew they were there. The same way you know when you're being watched, when the air feels thicker than it should be, when every instinct in your body tells you to stay very, very still. That instinct was clawing at me now, rising from my spine to the back of my throat. They weren't coming all at once. That wasn't how they worked. They circled, observed, tested. Every time I tried to impose human logic on their behavior, I caught myself. This wasn't about rage or hunger. It was about infiltration, precision, mimicry. That made them so much more dangerous. The emergency uplink was still active. I checked the diagnostics for the third time in 10 minutes. The satellite link was holding, the feed still broadcasting across the remaining local towers, repeating my looped warning alongside the latest radar pass and the crawler I'd programmed. There was no way to know how many were still receiving it, if anyone even had a functioning radio or power anymore. But I kept the signal alive, even if I was just screaming into the void. I updated the crawler with one final line. "If you receive this signal, you are the resistance now. Document, preserve, survive." I stared at it for a moment before pushing it live. I hesitated to use the word resistance. It sounded theatrical, almost like something from a movie, but I'd run out of other terms. This wasn't about waiting for the authorities anymore. If the scale of collapse was what it appeared to be, there were no authorities left to wait for. The control room's lights flickered once, just once. A quick drop in voltage, then stable again. My heart jumped. That breaker trip earlier, external only. But now it was starting to bleed into the building. I ran to the power cabinet and checked the breakers. All the circuits were untouched, but the indicator light on the backup generator relay was flashing. That only happened when someone, or something, triggered the reset from the external utility box, about 20 yards from the building. They were trying to cut the last lifeline. If the power went, I'd lose the cooling systems first. Servers would overheat in under an hour. Then the uplink would drop. No signal, no loop, no warning. Just silence. A dead station in the middle of a forest, buried under layers of failed systems and rotting code. I could go out there and reset it manually. I even considered it. The emergency flashlight was on the shelf beside me. I had a key to the outer electrical panel, a set of bolt cutters, and enough tape to patch any coax damage. But stepping outside would mean walking into their world. Even if I moved fast, even if I was quiet, I'd be exposing myself. And for what? To keep the warning going for another hour, another 30 minutes? A better idea came to me, one that took a few minutes to rig. I grabbed the portable camera used for on-site weather updates, the one we kept charged in a foam case behind Studio C. I wired it into the main console input and pointed it at the glass wall facing the pines. It wouldn't show me, but it would show them if they came. And I knew they would. I created a new broadcast loop, the camera feed, with my voiceover, pre-recorded and augmented with everything I'd learned so far. Then I walked to the studio floor, stood in the dark, and recorded the last thing I thought I might ever say. If you're watching this, you already know what's out there. The infection isn't random, it's targeted, strategic. The infected mimic speech, movement, even behavior. They don't just spread by contact, they spread by sound, by proximity. Stay isolated, stay quiet. Don't respond to voices unless you see who's speaking. Don't trust uniforms, badges, or markings. That's how they get close. We don't know if this started in a lab or a field or a failed experiment, but it doesn't matter now. It's here. It's in the towns, in the woods, in the frequencies we thought were safe. I stepped away from the mic and let the message render. The processing took 2 minutes. While it compiled, I shut off every interior light except for the panel glow in the broadcast room. I unbolted the inner door to the hallway but didn't open it. I stacked one of the heavy office chairs against the glass wall, carefully adjusted the camera framing, and checked the feed. Perfect. If they came, and they would, people watching would see it. Maybe not in real time. Maybe not until long after I was gone, but they'd see the truth. The camera would run on internal battery long enough to store it all. The system would archive it automatically to both cloud and satellite cache. At 1:56 a.m., the last text came through. No number, just a single line. "Thank you. You held the signal." I didn't know who sent it. Maybe a satellite tech watching the relay logs. Maybe someone at a clandestine ops base using dead channels to reach us. Maybe a survivor in another studio, just like me. It didn't matter. The floodlights outside the studio clicked on all at once. I hadn't turned them on. My hand flew to the console. I checked the power management. The lights weren't even routed to the interior systems anymore. I'd watched them go offline hours ago. Something had restored them from outside, remotely or manually. A few seconds later, the first silhouette stepped out of the tree line. It was a woman in a hospital gown. She moved with a stiff, stuttering gait, as if her legs weren't fully responding. Her arms dangled uselessly, but her eyes, those still worked. She stared directly at the glass. Behind her, more followed, a dozen, then more. Some still in uniform, EMTs, firemen, cops. One even wore the KPRS Channel 7 windbreaker. Jeff, the weekend tech. I recognized the badge lanyard still hanging from his neck. They didn't charge the building. They just surrounded it, watched. And slowly, in unison, they began tapping on the glass with their fingers. Just their fingertips. Soft, rhythmic, not random. It was Morse code. I listened, counted, translated. "Let us in." The sound grew louder. More of them joined, fingers against glass, 100 quiet taps. The walls trembled with it, but I didn't move, I didn't respond. I just stared, heart slamming in my chest, sweat trickling down my spine. Then one of them stepped forward. Not hunched, not twitching, straight-backed, composed. It looked like me. Same build, same clothes, same dark blue station badge clipped to its belt. Even the walk was familiar. It stood 3 feet from the glass, looked directly into the camera lens and smiled. Not wide, just enough to show it understood exactly what it was doing. Then, in a perfect imitation of my voice, it said, "This is Aaron Kepler, Channel 7. We're safe. Let us in." The glass didn't break. The power didn't fail. They didn't storm the studio. They just stood there, repeating it. My voice. Over and over again. And I sat alone in the broadcast chair, my real voice now silent, my looped warning still playing to a world I might never see again. I left the feed running. That's all I could do. Because the world didn't end with an explosion, or a scream, or the flash of emergency lights. It ended with a voice that sounded like mine, whispering comfort from just beyond the glass. Thanks for listening. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like and subscribe. Your support keeps these creepypastas coming. Until next time, stay alert, stay safe, and never ignore the feeling that something is watching.